Hey everybody, Dan Bieranowski here. I'll be hosting our talk today. Just saying hi to everybody, and we'll hang out for a minute and see as people join in the chat. We'll get started here in just a moment, guys. Just waiting for any stragglers to walk in. Can everybody hear me well? Just let me know in the chat here. Sorry if you can hear my keyboard clicking and clacking, but like I said, we'll get started in a moment. All right, so we're going to dive in. Today, we're talking about haunted house and horror sound design. This is kind of a unique subject. So some of this presentation is going to be PowerPoint based and some will be actual product demonstration. So I'd like this kind of thing to be interactive. So please, feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat, and we will be answering questions as much as we can. If there are too many questions for the subject matter at the time, we'll just bump those to the end. We've set aside some extra time at the end for Q&A. Otherwise, let's jump in. Like I said, the first little bit will be a PowerPoint just to kind of explain what I do, because it's kind of a unique job in that I do a lot of sound design for theme parks and escape rooms and stuff like that. Probably not something that you're thinking about all the time, but it's really fulfilling, fun work, and I think you'll find that the tools that Krotos provides make my job significantly more efficient, more creative, and easier to do. And as you can see with their mission statement, they state that they want to change the way that people design and perform sound, make it faster, easier, and more inspiring. And you'll see through this presentation that they achieve that on all fronts. It's really easy to use their tools and get great results. And we'll do a little bit of live demonstrating of that as well. Mainly today we're going to be talking about Dehumaniser 2, and I think one of the things that we do a lot in horror sound design particularly is manipulating voices and things like that, and in my history with doing this, it could be incredibly difficult and take a lot of time to get the sounds that you want. So as kind of a part of this demonstration, we're going to be covering that topic, and I do think if you see anything you like in this demonstration, it's good to know that there are 10-day demos of all the Krotos products. They're also offering 50% off Dehumaniser 2 and Simple Monsters, which is kind of like a light version of Dehumaniser. Right now, that deal is for a limited time. And at the end of this stream, we're going to be copy of Dehumaniser 2, but you have to be signed up for the live stream link, and you can, if you're not already signed up, you can sign up at the Facebook page, the Krotos Audio Facebook page. Okay, so let's talk about me a little bit. There's my big ugly head right there. I have been designing sound for theme parks and themed attractions since about 2012. I've designed audio for over 60 attractions now. This doesn't all occur at just one location. Knott's Berry Farm, which is a theme park in Southern California, was the first park to have a themed Halloween event. That started in 1973. Since then, companies like Universal and stuff have started their own theme park-based Halloween events, but Knott's was the granddaddy, and that's where I started. But I've also worked for the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. The Queen Mary is an old ship that they've taken over. It's docked in Long Beach, California permanently, and every Halloween we take over that ship and turn it into a really scary kind of haunted attraction with a few different of these walk-through maze attractions. I've worked on some escape rooms, the Haunted Hayride in Los Angeles, which is in an old abandoned zoo, actually, in Griffith Park. And the Haunted Hayride was also featured on the American version of Shark Tank, which was kind of a popular thing because they had a bunch of ghouls and stuff on the show, which was pretty entertaining. Winchester Mystery House is an old mansion up in Northern California in San Jose, and that's a unique place. It's over 100 rooms. It was built by Sarah Winchester, who was the heiress to the Winchester Repeating Arms company, and she built this very complex, very confusing mansion, and there's all kinds of theories of why she did that. Some people say it was to confuse the ghosts that were killed by the rifles that her husband had made, and so we turned that into a crazy haunted attraction last year. And Dark Horizons, an event out in Florida. So do this stuff all over California. Like I said, it's a pretty unique field. So to give you guys an idea of what a haunted attraction is, I've got two videos here. The first one is from Knott's Scary Farm, and this should give you a little bit of a taste of what these attractions look like and what their sound design needs might be.
You're all going to die.
So that gives you an idea of what Knott's looks like for Halloween. Basically, it's like a living horror movie. You walk through sets with lighting, props, sound design, special paint, all that kind of immersive theming. And the idea is that in a safe space, you can encounter a living horror film. It's a very popular event. We have a couple 100,000 visitors for that event each year around the rest of the theme park, which runs annually and gets about 4 million guests a year. So it's a really popular, really cool event. And like I said, it's been running since 1973, so almost 50 years of scaring the crap out of everybody, which is super fun. The next video is from the LA Haunted Hayride, and it does show a little bit more about how the events get built, which I think is also valuable because it gives you an idea of the time frames that we're working with to try to stand these events up and make sure that they sound great, look great, and are effective for the guests that come and enjoy them.
This year, when you come to the Los Angeles Haunted Hayride, you'll be transported to the town of Midnight Falls. It's 1985 and it's Halloween every night. The last 2 weeks have been crazy. Tons of work, lots of equipment. We have a very short window to set this show up in and make it as great as we can for you guys. We've completely revamped Trick or Treat, which is an old fan favorite. We've added a brand new haunted house called Midnight Mortuary, which is that scary haunted house at the end of the street. And we've also added Roadkill Ranch, which is all your favorite hillbillies and chainsaw-wielding maniacs. These attractions are going to be incredible. The Hayride is also all new for 2019. We've completely redesigned all of the sets. We've taken some of the fan favorites, but for the most part, everything on the Hayride this year is going to be something that you haven't seen before. So this is it. We work all year for this. It's the 2019 Los Angeles Haunted Hayride at Griffith Park.
So that gives you a pretty good idea of what Haunted Hayride looks like. A pretty unique event because it happens outdoors for the most part. And in that event, there are some walkthrough attractions, but you also get, for the actual Hayride part, you sit in the back of a trailer and they pull you through each scene. When we do our demo in a little bit here, we're going to be showing the audio from one of those scenes from the Hayride. So the first thing that I want to make sure that everyone here knows is that there's no right or wrong way to do this stuff. It's a creative pursuit and it's supposed to be fun. What I like about the tools that Krotos has provided us to do this kind of thing is that if you're a beginner, you can get excellent quality tools and sounds right off the bat from the presets. But if you want to dive in deeper, they also give you the ability to do so because their tools are very comprehensive. If you've ever used Concept, their synth application, there's just a little dice you can click on and it'll give you a new sound. So it's really easy to generate new sounds. But you can also dive in to each individual element and manipulate from there. So there's a lot of capability in these tools, but the first and most important part is that you have fun. I think any of us who's worked in audio design for an extensive period of time have dealt with situations where you hear the same sound effect over and over and over and over again, and you're editing and you're trying to make it perfect. I mean, the amount of times that I've listened to the sound effect of a person's scream is, it can't be counted. And if you're diving into that for 2 hours, it can be hard to have fun. So it's important to remember to take a step back and enjoy yourself and realize that what we're doing, whether we're doing it for our house on our front porch to scare, trick-or-treaters, or we're doing it on a big, wide-scale, large-scale event, people will hear in your design whether or not you're enjoying yourself. So make sure that you're taking advantage of the tools you have available to you and that you're actually enjoying yourself because, like I said, there's no right way to do it. Just do what feels right for you. For me, that all started with records like this. This is the Chilling Thrilling Sounds of the Haunted House, which was a Disneyland record. Records like this and cassette tapes and CDs and stuff that had these kind of pre-built horror sound designs. If you wanted a spooky haunted house, you would go to track 1. If you wanted a creepy carnival, you would go to track 2. When those were created, or at least this record in particular, there were no digital audio workstations. So you're looking at people who, if you wanted a scary voiceover, you had to find a voice actor who could perform well enough to pull off what you needed. And if you wanted to do things like pitch that down, you would need additional tape machines. Then you would need to slow down the first tape machine to reduce the pitch. Then if you wanted echo, you would need more tape heads. If you wanted reverb, you would need somebody a studio that had a reverb chamber or a plate reverb. So creating the sound of a scary voice was incredibly difficult. They didn't have the tools we have today. As time progressed, we got into digital audio workstations like this. And they allowed us to better and more efficiently design audio, but they still didn't provide us the tools that now we can get through a company like Krotos. When I started working with Pro Tools in 2006, 2007, if we wanted to create a very complex sound effect, especially on my old original generation MacBook, you would end up having to use a lot of Audio Suite plugins and rendering sound because the plugin buffers weren't good enough to support the amount of complex processing, pitch processing, delays, reverbs, etc. that you would need. So you would have to commit each step of the way. And if you weren't automatically backing up, you could get 2 hours down the wrong road and you wouldn't be able to look back, you know? So it's important to recognize where these sound design tricks and effects came from to realize their efficiency and the positive gain that we get today for, you know, the amount that it costs to purchase or even just demo something for free and see immediate efficiency gains. And again, allow creative people to be creative rather than having to be technical, because while we can be technical, it does pull back on our ability to be creative and focus on the task at hand. So tools like Dehumaniser and Reformer Pro definitely not only give us an efficiency gain while we're doing this design work, but they allow us to be in the right headspace while we're doing design work and not pulling us out worrying about the technical details that people used to have to think about when doing this kind of sound design. So in my history, the way this has worked was I originally started recording audio on a Tascam Portastudio cassette recorder, a 4-track. I'm sure a lot of you out there have worked on those as well. I got one of those in about 1998. Then I got a digital Boss BR532, which was a 4-track digital recorder that recorded to compact flash, if you remember compact flash. And then I became a monster at Not Scary Farm, like this lovely bearded lady here on the right. And with that, I already knew that I loved Haunt because I had been going to Knott's Scary Farm since 1994 as a guest. And then I knew I wanted to work there. I did the year as a monster in 2006. Then I moved into technical work for Knott's Berry Farm in 2007, and I just did front of house, general day operations, show running. But it gave me some insight as to what it's like to do audio in a theme park, which is not what it was like for me to do audio at home or in a studio or, you know, doing audio for film. In a theme park, you have people screaming the whole time. You have roller coasters running. Your noise floor is very high. So the way that you design audio has to be able to be heard clearly above that high noise floor. So when you're designing for attractions like this, one good tip is to make sure that you are working a lot with reducing dynamic content. You want a lot of brick wall limiting, a lot of saturation, things that will read over a loud noise floor. You're also going to be working in mono a lot because you don't want guests to have phase issues when they're walking through an attraction, and you can't control how close they are from one speaker or another, or from one source or another. So it's valuable to practice mixing in mono so that you can make sure that your stereo field doesn't collapse as you're rendering tracks out. So I worked at Knott's Scary Farm and have worked at Knott's Scary Farm and Knott's Berry Farm in a sound design capacity since 2012. So I did the audio tech stuff from 2007 to about 2012, and that included hanging speakers and running cable under stages and all that awful stuff that I never want to do again because I'm too fat and old. But the design stuff is very conducive to being fat and old, so I definitely recommend it for anybody looking. These are some photos from Knott's Scary Farm. This is a front facade you would see when you walk in the front gates of the park. So you can see how we theme everything with lighting, and there would be obviously audio playing, and we have props here and paint and all kinds of stuff. And one thing that I do also want to make sure that is understood from from a preliminary standpoint is turnaround time, right? Not Scary Farm runs until about November 1st, and then we open Christmas usually about November 15th to 21st. So in a 2-week period, we have to be able to turn over this design from Halloween themed to Christmas themed. So it's also important to recognize, if you're interested in this field, that you have to be very adaptable. Things change quickly. We don't have a lot of time to install. We don't have a lot of time to sound check. So it's important that you're able to adapt on the fly. So why is sound design important in haunted attractions? To me, the most effective part of a lot of scary movies or haunted attractions is just the audio. What I want you to think about is, if you close your eyes and you imagine that you're in a room that is completely pitch black, that there's no other objects in that room at all. There doesn't have to be any monsters or people, no props, nothing else. But you just imagine sound in that room. You can really manipulate a person based on what they're hearing. So you don't need great lighting, great props, great paintwork. If you can remove all those items, you can still have an effective scary attraction, as opposed to if you walked into a room that was just lit scary, it wouldn't be that effective in scaring people. They would just see the scary lighting. So I'm biased because I'm a sound designer, but I feel like when it comes to scary movies, scary attractions, that kind of thing, you can accomplish almost everything you need with just sound design. John Carpenter originally screened Halloween privately to some industry insider friends, but it didn't have the score and it didn't have the sound effects. And he stated that the movie was a failure at that point. By adding in the score and the sound effects, he said it actually saved the film, and now Halloween's the most influential slasher of all time. And he attributes a lot of that to the sound design of that movie. And Steven Spielberg said that he believes the score for Jaws was responsible for half the success of that movie, and that's just 2 notes played. Now, you could say that the score maybe isn't part of the sound design, but I do think that for the attractions we're talking about right now, we're looking at the score or the audio or sound design in total. So not just sound effects themselves, but also the music, because it applies setting and vibe, and that's obviously very important when it comes to this kind of thing. All right, we're going to talk about my process. I'm going to take a drink of water. So everybody's process when they work on sound design and stuff is going to be their own. So this might not be applicable to you in total, but maybe it'll give you some ideas, which is what I hope. First things first, the designer, the creative designer of the attraction, that might be you, or it might be somebody you work with. In my case, it's usually somebody I work with. They provide a list of the elements they're looking for in an attraction. So in this case, this is for the maze called Lullaby, which was at Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. And you can see we passed through a couple sections of background music. We've got those on loops, right? So they need to play all night on a loop without the guests or whoever's watching your film or playing your video game recognizing that loop point when that track ends and starts over again. So there's a lot of creativity involved in creating fine loop points. We also have some thunder strikes. We have some disembodied children. Of course, that's always terrifying. We have a monster teddy bear, which is going to be a jump scare. And we have another jump scare with a woman laughing like an evil old hag kind of thing. So this list will be given to me by the creative designer, and they'll also give me a layout of the maze. This is something I made. It's very rudimentary, but it gives you an idea of what these walkthroughs might look like. And there'll be real ground plans to scale, so you know the first BGM track needs to play here, the second one needs to play here, the third needs to play here. And in this little closet here, we're going to have a jump scare, and that's going to enable us to trigger a scare by a monster who will jump out at the guests and give them a quick boo. So when we're approaching our sound design, it's important to understand this layout. It's also important to understand how your sounds can conflict with one another. If you don't want this background music track to conflict with this one, you have to make sure that they play well together. So these are all important things to think about when you're approaching a design. We also need to look at system needs and requirements. In this case, do we need any subs? Do we have access to any subs? Excuse me. What if we only have one Bluetooth speaker for our porch for little kids to walk up and we can scare them through that? Our design needs to account for that. So we have to make sure that we're designing based on what our system availability is, or we need to tailor our system to what our sound design calls for. Next, we start building all that sound design track by track, and that happens in Pro Tools or whatever your digital audio workstation of choice is. We also have sound effects libraries, obviously, and we have these insane recording sessions of people screaming and dying and all that fun stuff. Excuse me. Yeah, so this gives you an idea of what it takes to build one of these attractions. So now we're going to demo a little bit of the software that I use from Krotos and how I use it. So now what we'll do is we'll play this scene. This is from the LA the LA Haunted Hayride from last year. This will give you an idea of what this type of drive-up attraction might sound like when you pull up to the next scene. You pull up and there's this giant demon rising up on a big a lift. And when he starts to speak, the actor is lip syncing, basically presenting as if they're speaking. And this is what that sounds like.
Turn back now. Beware as he rises to the harvest. The spirit of Halloween brings forth eternal darkness.
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants, for I am the father of all serpents. Destroy them all. Make them bleed, as I am the true, the only, the ghost of Halloween.
So that gives you an idea of what one of these scenes might sound like. And the idea is you pull up in your trailer, you see this scene of this giant demon ghost of Halloween kind of basically tell his minions to attack. And right as the music hits at the end, all the monsters swarm and attack the trailer as it pulls away. So super fun, high energy, pretty effective scares. And nice for the guests because it's passive. They don't have to walk through. They just kind of sit and enjoy the show. We did have a couple questions come through the chat that I do want to answer real quick. So what are the most common sound triggers? Are jump scares triggered by hand or their proximity sensors? Usually it's a foot pedal. We can hide those in strategic places in these attractions, and they can take repeated abuse. Sometimes it's a hand trigger, like it's a button. Usually it's a foot pedal because they can take a pounding because they have to run 8 hours a night, 30 nights in a row. So they have to be very well built and designed to handle that kind of thing. This person said, I haven't tried surround mixing before. Have you ever made the sound of something walking around you in a room? Yeah, I have. It's actually, it's not that difficult to do. I don't have Pro Tools Ultimate. I just have regular Pro Tools. You can even see in this session here, I'm out of voices. I have a few different sessions for the Hayride because I can't afford Pro Tools Ultimate, so I just run out of voices and I create session 2. So I don't have Ultimate, so I don't have the surround bundle or capability or whatever. So what I'll do is I'll create a track. I'll actually demonstrate this real quick because it'll be fast and I think you guys will get something out of it. So I'll create a track and I'll use the aux sends. Create 3 more tracks to receive our sound or whatever. Now let's pretend that this music track is our person walking around the room, okay? What we're going to do from here is on our 3 tracks that will be the person walking around you, this will be pulled in from bus 1, this will be pulled in from bus 2, and this will be pulled in from bus 3. Okay? And what I'll do is I'll send this track, let me pull up my sends. Down bus 1, bus 2, and bus 3. Whoops, these need to go up here. And then I'll use automation, the level, for the first part of this. Let's cheat a little bit. And then for the second part of this, we'll do send 2. And I'm just jamming through this to make it fast so that people don't get too bored. And then send 3. And this isn't going to obviously sound great, but whatever. You get the gist of it. As I record these, when I play this back, hopefully this isn't too loud, guys. Sorry. How about we just mute these? So obviously this isn't, the crossfades aren't perfect, but if I did footsteps on these, I could have that panned hard left, have that panned hard right, or it could be center and you're just talking about mono speakers. But when I play this back, so if you were in a room and there were 3 different speakers, if the room was like a square and there was speakers in like the shape of a triangle, as the walking is occurring in your playback system, if you play all of these from 0 at the same time, it's going to hit the first speaker, then fade into the second speaker, then fade into the third speaker. And it's going to sound like it's walking around the room around you. And you can see, I mean, we did that in 30 seconds. But if you massage it, to be perfect, they it'll sound like it's walking around you without ever actually having to use a surround sound system. You could actually just use 3 speakers running off of, a single playback device, like even if it's just like your home interface, and this is out send 1, this is out send 2, this is send 3, this goes into amp channel 1, amp channel 2, amp channel 3, then speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. So totally nerdy side journey there into how to do a quick and dirty surround sound trick for your guests or whoever's experiencing things. Anyways, okay, so back to our original design. So I played this for you, and as you could hear, there's this nice voiceover where we're using Dehumaniser to process this voiceover.
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants!
So it's a good performance. It's actually my buddy John Cook. He's the creative director for 13th Floor Entertainment. He also sings for a band called Winds of Plague. So if you're familiar with like that metal band, he's the singer of that band, and he also does a lot of haunted attraction sound design. Now, without this processing, right, we're going to turn off Dehumaniser. We'll turn off some of this other stuff too. This is what that performance sounds like.
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants!
So it's a good performance, but it doesn't sound like a demon. It just sounds like a yelling dude. First of all, I'm removing some plosives. I'm doing a little bit of EQ work, and then I'm just smashing it with some gain reduction because, like I said, it has to read over the sound of a tractor engine, has to read really loud. So next up, we apply some Dehumaniser to it to give it some pitch shifting and also some weird spatial vibes, basically. So I'm gonna bypass that, turn it on and off so you can hear the differences.
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants! For I am the...
And then we hit it with some more saturation, just to really help it read above all that music and noise, then a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb.
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants, for I am the Father.
So you can see this is a Dehumaniser 2 process track. I'm splitting the signal between the downward pitch shift and then another downward pitch shift that's delayed, and then we hit a little bit of a chorus on that one just to give it some body, basically. So if I bypass these, let's see how they sound.
My servants, for I am the Father of all serpents. Destroy them all! Make them bleed as I am the true.
So how do we arrive at that sound? What I end up doing usually is just powering through different presets. So like with Dehumaniser, it's really easy to get good sounds off these presets. So let's start with, I duplicated the track here. Let's just listen back to this.
My servants, for I am the Father of all serpents.
So that sounds really cool already, but we're gonna just go through some of these monsters. So let's go. Big Guy is the default that I used on the original track.
My servants, for I am the Father of all serpents.
But that's too low to read well on this kind of attraction, so we'll pull that up a bit.
My servants, for I am the Father of all serpents. Destroy.
And maybe we want to add some flange or something to widen that a little bit. So we can add another output here and just plug that bad boy in. Now this track won't have the pitch down on it because you can see we're splitting our track across the two. But let's see how it sounds.
My servants, for I am the father of all serpents. Destroy them all.
So that's the original.
Make them bleed, as I am the true, the only, the...
And that extra voice added in is actually kind of cool. It's weird, and it makes it sound bigger, and maybe you end up wanting to mix the two together.
My servants, for I am the father of all serpents.
That's pretty great sounding. And in the context of the mix, let's unsolo the...
The veil shatters as my flesh gathers. Rise up, my servants, for I am the
So obviously, that sounds great and super easy to achieve that. Where in the past, you're literally having to process everything one by one, right? We have to remove the plosives, and we might have to commit that change. Then we need to apply our EQ. Then we need, pitch shifting and flanging and time delays and things like that. And a lot of that is heavy on processing. So having these tools is, a huge deal. Let's make him a robot. Let's see what happens with a robot. Why not, right? Fluctuating robot.
The veil shatters as my servants, for I am the father of serpents. Destroy them all. Make them bleed, as I am the true, the only, the ghost of...
Super weird. I love it. So, whole point being how it's really easy to get great sounds with Dehumaniser. So, like we were talking about earlier, it's 50% off right now. So, if you're looking for something for really effective voiceover sound design, it's a great tool and very, very efficient. There's all kinds of other functionality in here, like sample triggering, where if you hit a certain amplitude, it'll play a sample trigger, which is really neat because you can put roars and things behind the voice to kind of bolster it, make it bigger. So that kind of gives you an idea of how I use Dehumaniser. Next, we're going to talk about Reformer, but I think we have a couple questions. Let me take a look. Okay, so am I using pre-made sound libraries in my sound design? Yeah, constantly. I don't. There are people who are way better at designing sound effects than me. I have no qualms about that, and I'm happy to give them my money for the things that they create. Sometimes the sound design is my own. Sometimes I build stuff myself. But with the amount of attractions that I work on, I don't have time to do sound design for every single sound effect in every maze. So if I need something like crickets or nighttime ambience, I'm going to grab that from a library. A lot of jump scare sounds that I use are multiple layered impact sounds. So I don't just grab one out of a library traditionally. I'll grab like 5 and I will time align them all and then I'll process them all in my own way. Sometimes that means just taking the attack of one and the decay of another. Sometimes it means passing all of them through, a different processing tool like a transient designer, so they hit super hard because we're trying to achieve a jump scare out of maybe only a 5-inch speaker. So we need a lot of transient there so it really, really punches through. Sometimes it's, I like this sound effect, but it needs like a breaking glass over the top of it because they're supposed to be jumping out of a window. So we're compiling different sound effects libraries, but there's a lot of really good libraries out there from companies like Boom Library or Sound Iron and stuff like that. Krotos actually partners with a lot of them for Reformer, which is what we're going to talk about now. And that can give you a little bit of an idea of how those libraries might come in handy for you. So let's talk a little bit about Reformer. I think that was my last question. Oh, one more. How do you handle screams while they were recorded so that the sound isn't clipping? That's it. I mean, you pull the gain back, and when you're sound checking, have the person scream, make sure it's not clipping the mic pre. After they're done, treat that scream with really heavy compression. If you have like an 1176 type plugin, use that plugin to really smash that scream to give it a lot of balls, for lack of a better term. Also saturation. Apply a lot of saturation on it, because screams can sound really weak, and they won't come across right if they don't have that kind of, body underneath them that saturation typically will add. So heavy compression, heavy saturation. But when you're initially grabbing that scream, just make sure when you're sound checking that, get right up against when it clips, and then dial back even a little bit more, because they'll probably eat the mic when they're actually doing the take, because they're going to be so into it, because it's hard to perform that type of scream without really going for it. And it takes, if they're in the right headspace to deliver a good scream, let them run with it for a while. When I'm recording screams with friends who are maybe actors or somebody, let them go till they can't go anymore. Sometimes we need to record people crying or screaming for help or whatever. That's a difficult headspace to get into. So just let them go, and you'll have a bunch of takes to choose from, and they don't have to keep coming back and going back to that place. They can just kind of knock it all out. Hopefully that helps and answers the question. Okay, so let's talk about Reformer. So here's a sample of a jump scare sound right here. And all it is an impact, and then it's two different sets of tracks that I'm using to trigger Reformer Pro. So without telling you what I'm using Reformer Pro for, I'm just going to play you this. It's if you imagine somebody jumping out at you from a dark corner, you're going to hear a bunch of monster screeches, and you're going to hear blood and gore kind of splurting all over the place. So it's effective, right? It's easy, effective, sounds great. Now, what is actually happening here is kind of special, and I really like Reformer Pro because of this. The monster sound that you're hearing is this. But where that monster sound is coming from, or how it's being played, is via a library being triggered by Reformer Pro. So if I disable Reformer Pro, this is what is actually playing underneath those monster roars. So all that is a bunch of a guy getting killed, basically, cut together really quickly. Reformer Pro looks at that input, and it plays or triggers sound effects from a library based on what it's seeing in that original track. So you may want monster roars like I have here, or you may want the sound of a Bengal tiger. And you can load this Bengal tiger library. Or you might want a black leopard. So all you have to do is choose the appropriate library, and the application will recognize, or the plugin will recognize, the amplitude and the dynamics of what you're feeding it to play back the sounds from your library. Now, these libraries can be your own personal libraries, as is the case with my monster roars. or they can be pre-purchased or pre-built libraries. Reformer comes with some, and you can buy additional ones, and they're reasonably priced, and they're all really great. Now, the beauty of this is that you have this 4-way kind of selector window. It's like an XY window. And with that, you can specify how much of one sound you want or another. So in the case of my monster roars, I have all these different monster roars from this library. Or I can go in to the second quadrant of this, and I can just specify I only want these first couple monster voices. And on the third, I can pick a different set of monster voices. Where did that go? There it is. And you can see we've muted the ones we don't want, and we've left the ones on that we do want. And so I can actually take this, and I can fade between these 4 different sets of sound effects and either find a comfortable medium between all 4, or I can pick which one I like the most. So it's really easy to audition sounds and find what you're looking for. And if you need something in particular, like a zombie dying or something, you can perform it into your microphone and record it, and then just drop Reformer Pro over the top of it, and it will it'll do the trick for you. So on the flip side, we have this gore sound effect, this blood and guts and all that stuff that you hear spilling out underneath our monster yelling. Our gore effect sounds like this. It's pretty disgusting. What is actually playing under that is the same track as before, just stretched out. So you don't need your original track to sound anything like what you're looking for. It just needs to have the right cadence to fire the samples that you want. And you can just drag between these and find the gurgly, googly sound that you want. And all together, that sounds like this. Super easy and effective with Reformer. Those 2 tools, Dehumaniser and Reformer, have literally saved me hours and hours and hours of time, because try to imagine editing this many samples together with crossfades that work seamlessly in a pattern that you desire and at an amplitude that you're looking for. Doing that one by one individually in a track versus just throwing a plugin on and clicking a preset. I mean, it's just, in time savings, right? Efficiency savings, these investments made sense for me. For you, you can just demo them for free for 10 days and see if they work for you. But they're very, very valuable tools with their both the quality and the time savings. I think I had a couple more questions. Do you see any opportunities for interactive reactive music in a setup like this? Absolutely, yes. One thing that I have actually talked to Krotos about was if there was a way to use a product like Reformer to trigger samples off of a foot like a foot sensitive pad, because a common way to pull somebody out of an attraction is that when they're walking through it, they don't hear their footsteps. So how cool would it be if you're walking through what looks like a swamp scene? As you step down, you step on some sort of pressure sensitive pad that triggers the sound effect of a step in swamp water, right? So you're not necessarily walking through a swamp, you're walking through a set, but the sound that surrounds you is realistic to as you're walking through that set. So something like Reformer could do that. It would just require, feeding it from the appropriate type of trigger. So reactive or interactive sound design in these types of attractions could be huge for immersion. On a smaller scale, we do stuff like that already. We'll put dummy buttons in attractions because we know people will press them because people are dumb and they don't think anything will happen. So if we have like an old broken down elevator, we'll put an elevator button there. And as they're walking through, they'll go, oh, what does this do? And they'll press it, and we'll play a jump scare sound or the sound of like a truck horn, like a really loud horn, or we'll have air blasts that are, blasted out at them. So there is interactive design, but not to the level of immersion that I think we're going to get to here in the future. So cool. So that's kind of the demonstration part of the software. Now we'll kind of talk about what happens after we finish building all those elements. Somebody mentioned in the chat that, like, yeah, give your neighbors a heads up when you're recording people screaming and dying. 100% true. I mean, at Knott's Berry Farm, we have a studio that is right next to the foods administration staff. So while they're working on, that week's menu at the different restaurants, they're literally just hearing people dying and monsters all day and all night. And sometimes we grab them. We're like, hey, foods admin person, need somebody to die real quick. Can you come record for me? They always get a kick out of that. If you live next door to somebody and you're going to be doing this and you're not using headphones, give them a heads up. It's going to be a real bummer for them for a while they listen to this. The unique thing at Knott's is that we work all night sometimes, because the park is open during the day to normal guests who just want to go to a theme park. So then we'll come in at night with the crew that builds the Halloween event. And sometimes, it's 1 or 2 a.m. and we're hammering away at this horrific, gory sound design. So now we finished all of our file design and we need to deliver those files. So it's important to understand what format you're delivering to. If you're just working from an MP3 player because it's for your front yard, it's a little spooky haunted house in your front yard, you maybe don't want 96K WAV files for your MP3 player that'll just max out its memory and you'll only have a 2-minute loop or something. You want to make sure that you're delivering files appropriate for the playback device. Then we go through sound check and we tweak things. We cannot guess what this stuff is going to sound like in these attractions. They're built temporarily, right? So these walls are put up just for during the summer for the month of October. So when you set up this here, there may be some really bad flutter echoes, or there might be some low-end content that doesn't read well, which means you need to be adaptable and you need to make changes on the fly real quickly so that the application of the audio is as good as it can be. Sometimes this happens after opening weekend. You didn't realize that you had this scream sound coming out of the speaker every 5 seconds for 8 hours, and the actor that has to work in here has to listen to that, and they want to run their head through the wall. So you might need to make changes to your design to better suit the talent that needs to live in that room for 8 hours a night for 30 days. And then the best part about Halloween, right? It happens every year. So you take everything you learned, apply it all for next year so that next year things are even bigger, better, more effective. Tools come out throughout the year. Krotos releases more products. New versions of your DAW come out that make it better and more efficient and give you better quality than you could have imagined in the past. And you apply those to next year and you get those new tools, and it's always really exciting to try something new. So now let's just focus on Q&A for a few minutes before we move into the giveaway. We're running at the end of our session here, and I want to make sure that anybody who has any questions can get them in. All right, let's see. I'm just scrolling through the chat here. Yeah, somebody asked if you can add your own samples inside Reformer Pro. It's very, very easy to do when you want to add a library. Let me drag this up so you can see it. You can click this add button and you choose the folder that you want to scan for your samples and the sample rates, and you click create. That's all you have to do. And it'll create that library for you right here in this drop down. So if you have a library of jump scare sounds that you know you like, or whatever monster voices or something, all you have to do is click this button and choose the sample rates you want it to be available within Reformer, and you're done. It's very efficient and very easy to do. Any loudness targets that I aim for with this content? Not really, because it always depends on the system. Basically, all we want to make sure is that the file is not clipping, and from there, usually volume at that level is controlled by the playback system itself. So we deliver a non-clipping file with no LUFS standard or anything like that, because it's different for every attraction, it's different for every room, and a lot of the times we just don't have time to dig into things that deeply. Pretty frequently, your blue sky idea of what this attraction is going to be like or sound like or look like is you're not even able to get halfway there, because time, you run out of time. Things have to be built, and they have to look great and sound great, and they have to be lit and all that stuff. So you have to make sure that your design is strong even at its most basic, so that if you don't get all the bells and whistles you hope for, if you can't meet your LUFS standard, it can still sound good. Minimum required length for tracks. This is a good question. It depends, right? If you're going to have an actor in a room listening to the same track all day and all night, let's say it's a song, you want that to at least be a couple minutes long, because they're going to hear that song in their sleep after they go home. So let's say they work. I had a maze that had a dentist drill sound effect in it. It was called Tooth Fairy. And that maze, imagine listening to a dentist drill all day and all night. And now imagine if it was only like a 10-second long clip. So we try to make that a couple minutes long so it's somewhat dynamic and changes, so that person doesn't go nuts. So, your design should be what's best for the guest, right? Your guests are going to walk through maybe once a minute. So you don't need it to technically be longer than a minute, because that's how often a guest will walk through that room. But your talent has to be able to live in there as well for 8 hours a night. So try to find a comfortable middle ground there. Do I do field recording often? Sometimes. It's hard to do any field recording at Knott's Berry Farm or at Haunted Hayride or anywhere like that, because they are active sites full of people, and it's hard to get isolated sounds. If I can get an isolated sound somewhere, I'll take it. Even if it's on my iPhone, I'll take a voice recording of it, because you never know when you might be able to use that. Are there any specs to follow if you want to create your own library? Not really. I mean, it depends on what you want to create. One of the things that you're going to find is hardest is finding isolated sounds. If you want the ambience of a nighttime in the city, it's okay for there to be all these noises, right? Because it's supposed to sound like a city. But if you want the ambience of a nighttime out on a farm, you can't take that in a city, because the sounds won't work, right? You have to get to that location. So libraries are really effective in those instances. If you need the sound of somebody shoveling dirt, that's a lot easier for you to get. So in terms of specs to follow, just try to get as close to nominal or clipping as you can when you're getting that sound effect, because you're going to pick up a lot of background noise anytime you're doing any field recording, and you want to get as much of that specific sound you're looking for as possible, so that you're not amplifying that noise floor every time that you're trying to bring up the sound of crickets at night or something like that. Somebody mentioned normalizing sounds in the library. that's a good tool, right? But if you don't, if you're not pushing your mic pre at least close to clipping, then when you normalize, you're bringing up your noise floor. So you want to make sure that, you can normalize everything, but when you capture the source, you want to try to keep that source and the noise floor as far apart as possible. That way you're not amplifying the noise floor. Cool. I think that about covers it. If anybody else has any questions or anything comes up, you can add me on Instagram. You can send me questions or anything like that. I think my Instagram is The Mystic Frequency, and you know, my name. You can search for my name on Facebook or something, and it'll come up. Oh wait, we got one more question. Have I ever snuck in some famous screams or voices from movies, TV shows, games, etc.? Absolutely, yeah. Wilhelm scream, all that stuff. We'll sneak that stuff in. We'll also do stuff like, let's say we're in a room that's demonic, right? So you flip the audio. In the audio, we'll hide all these Easter eggs of like, you know, hey buddy, how you doing today? Like, I'm just a monster doing my job. And then you flip it backwards and it sounds super evil and scary, but it's just something goofy. And I've also hidden like the Barney theme song, like kids shows music in mazes and stuff. You find ways to have fun. Like I said, the important part is that you have a good time. We're doing creative things. We should be enjoying ourselves. And the other thing is, a lot of the times, at least in a commercial attraction, you're working on a crew. So you're hanging out with your friends all day and all night, basically building nightmares and scares and things like that. And with that comes a lot of camaraderie and a lot of you know, inside jokes and things like that. And you'll hide that stuff in attractions. So you might walk through a maze and see your name painted as a street sign or something. You know, that's just the fun of working on a crew and building something together and making something amazing. You know, I think while it's fun to do our own attractions because we have full control, the best is always brought out of people working on a team and contributing their own, you know, their own ideas and their own perspectives on things. And as diverse as you can make that is as universal the themes will be in your attraction. So it's really important to recognize that. Okay, so let's move on to our winners. So we're doing some runner-up prizes for Simple Monsters. Well, one runner-up prize for Simple Monsters, and then we're doing a prize for Dehumaniser 2. So the Simple Monsters prize winner is... Oh, wait. Gareth Croson. Yay, Gareth. So, Gareth, you won Simple Monsters, and the Dehumaniser 2 prize winner is... Wait, everybody. Moa Jansen. I think I said that right. Moa Jansen wins Dehumaniser 2, which is obviously epic. So Gareth Croson, you won Simple Monsters. Moa Jansen, you won Dehumaniser 2. And with that, everybody, we're going to wrap up. Oh, wait. I played it again. And happy Halloween, everybody. Have a good Halloween. Thanks for joining us on the stream. Appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you learned something interesting. This is a really unique field, and there's a lot of work in it. So if you have theme parks or theaters or escape rooms or haunted attractions or anything like that around you, dive into those. You know, there may be work that you previously weren't considering that will allow you to do sound design every day and every night. I'm able to do this pretty regularly for my work, and I do it, you know, not just for Halloween, for Christmas, for spring, for summer events, you know. So there's a lot of work out there available for this kind of sound design. So look around, see what you can find, and, you know, just like I said, have fun, enjoy yourself. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a good rest of your day.